A man went to attend someone's wedding, only to discover that the bride was actually his own daughter, Rueying. He was shocked and immediately turned away, lowering his head to avoid being recognized. Remembering what his daughter had said before, it suddenly dawned on him, she wasn't going abroad to study as she'd claimed. She was abandoning her poor father to marry into money. Watching all this unfold broke his heart, but to protect his daughter's happiness, he stayed in the shadows, watching from a distance. After that day, he threw himself into work, pushing himself harder than ever to make money, and never mentioned his daughter again. 3 years passed this way. The young couple lived a sweet and happy life together, though there was one regret: Rueying and her husband still hadn't been able to have children. Seoyoung, the man's son, found it strange that their father never talked about his sister. Even when Rueying called to congratulate Seoyoung on his college graduation, their father would deliberately change the subject. Didn't he miss Rueying at all? When asked, the father simply said that since Rueying didn't care about him, he didn't want to bother her either. It was as simple as that. What Seoyoung didn't know was that every Sunday, their father would claim he was going hiking but was actually checking on Rueying. He hadn't missed a single week in 3 years. Seeing his daughter living well in her wealthy household filled him with relief each time. Whenever he spotted news about his son-in-law in the papers, he'd happily clip and save the articles. As long as Rueying and Wukai were doing well, he had no intention of disrupting their lives. One morning, Wukai went out for his usual jog. Distracted by a phone call from Rueying, he didn't notice a car speeding toward him. At the critical moment, the father, who happened to be there visiting his daughter, pushed him out of harm's way, saving his life but collapsing unconscious on the ground himself. When the father came to, he found himself in a hospital bed. A nurse came to register his information, but just as he finished giving his address, he spotted his son-in-law Wukai. To keep his identity hidden, he snuck out while the nurse was taking him for tests. Meanwhile, Rueying had rushed to the hospital after hearing the news. Father and daughter passed right by each other without realizing it. Relieved to find Wukai unharmed, Rueying's only regret was that they couldn't thank his savior in person. Mrs. Jiang couldn't understand why someone would save a person and then disappear without a word. Mr. Jiang also felt their son should properly thank the man who'd saved his life. Quick thinking, Rueying realized the hospital must have the man's information on file. Wukai agreed this made sense and soon obtained the father's address from the hospital records. Meanwhile, the father had lost his moving company job due to his injured wrist. Just when he was at his wit's end about what to do next, his son-in-law unexpectedly showed up at his door. Grateful for being saved, Wukai insisted on taking Uncle Lee to the hospital for a proper checkup. When Uncle Lee firmly refused, Wukai had no choice but to pull out the 5 million won he'd prepared as a thank you. Seeing he couldn't refuse everything, Uncle Lee finally agreed to accept just 100,000 won for medical expenses. Wukai was surprised the old man wanted so little. Since Uncle Lee was so insistent, he handed over the 100,000 won along with his business card. Before leaving, Wukai wanted to know Uncle Lee's name. Terrified that Wukai might mention him to his daughter Rueying, Uncle Lee gave him his friend's name instead, Lu Wanhao. His friend found it strange that Uncle Lee wouldn't use his real name. Uncle Lee could only explain that he had bad credit and didn't want to embarrass himself. On his way back, it suddenly hit Wukai. Uncle Lee had mentioned the 100,000 won was 2 days' worth of day labor wages. This meant Uncle Lee didn't have a steady job. Wukai immediately turned back to the store and asked Uncle Lu where Uncle Lee worked. That's when he learned Uncle Lee had lost his moving job due to a wrist injury. Soon after, when Rueying heard that Wukai's lifesaver didn't have steady employment, she suggested Wukai find him an easy position at their company. The company happened to need a security guard, so Wukai asked Uncle Lee's friend to convince him to take the job. When Uncle Lee heard the monthly salary was 1.5 million won, he was instantly hooked and decided to go for the interview without a second thought. Since Wukai had already put in a word with the supervisor, the man skipped the interview entirely and took Uncle Lee straight to the changing room. Telling him to get dressed and start working right away, Uncle Lee was thrilled, thinking he'd hit the jackpot. But then Wukai suddenly appeared behind him. Uncle Lee was so startled he dropped the clothes he was holding. When he realized Wukai had arranged this job for him, Uncle Lee absolutely refused to accept it and angrily told Wukai to stop meddling in his business. His strange reaction only made Wukai more curious about what was going on. To keep Wukai from digging deeper, Uncle Lee reluctantly accepted the job and quietly settled into his new role. A few months later, Wukai wanted Rueying to meet his lifesaver, so he asked her to come to the company and wait for him. When Rueying arrived, Uncle Lee spotted her immediately. He crouched behind a wall, secretly watching his daughter. Wukai couldn't help but laugh at Uncle Lee's ridiculous posture. Curious about what Uncle Lee was looking at, he followed his gaze and discovered Uncle Lee was watching Rueying. When Wukai approached and asked what he was doing there, Uncle Lee panicked, not knowing how to answer. Wukai mentioned that his wife happened to be there today and had always wanted to thank him for saving his life, so he wanted to invite him to dinner. Realizing he was about to destroy his daughter's marriage, Uncle Lee went pale with fear. He quickly made up an excuse about having other plans and hurried off. Wukai didn't push it, though he found it a bit odd. Uncle Lee knew that if he kept working there, he'd eventually run into his daughter Rueying. To avoid this inevitable meeting, he submitted his resignation to Wukai, claiming that a relative in Busan had opened a factory and needed his help. While Wu Kai was disappointed, he didn't want to stand in the way. He simply told Uncle Lee to reach out if he ever needed anything. After Uncle Lee left the office, Wu Kai realized it was freezing outside and the old man was wearing such thin clothes. He wanted to give him a down jacket as a parting gift, but when he got to the locker room, Uncle Lee had already gone. Just then, a new employee found a photo in one of the lockers. When Wu Kai took a look, he was shocked to see it was a picture of his wife. Remembering how he caught Uncle Lee staring at Rueying before, Wu Kai couldn't shake the feeling that there was something between them. To get to the bottom of this, Wu Kai went to the address listed on Uncle Lee's resume. Since Uncle Lee had been using his friend Lu Wanhao's name at work, Wu Kai asked the landlady if this was where Lu Wanhao lived, but she told him the tenant's name was actually Lee Samjae. The name hit Wu Kai like a ton of bricks. His late father-in-law was also named Lee Samjae. The landlady mentioned that Uncle Lee's daughter used to live there, but after Uncle Lee and his son moved in, she never came back. A wild theory started forming in Wu Kai's mind. Could Uncle Lee actually be his father-in-law? But his wife had clearly told him her father was dead. With his suspicions growing stronger, Wu Kai went to the police station to check his wife's family records. That's when the shocking truth hit him. The man who had saved his life was none other than his father-in-law, Lee Samjae. After piecing things together, he realized that while Uncle Lee knew about his marriage to Rueying had no idea what was happening in her father's life. This meant she'd cut ties with her dad right after getting married. Suddenly, his wife felt like a complete stranger to him. Unable to face her, he went out drinking with friends to clear his head. Meanwhile, Rueying waited on the couch for him to come home. When she woke up in the middle of the night thinking he was still out, she opened the bedroom door only to find him already asleep. She felt hurt. In the past, he would have carried her to bed before going to sleep himself. She couldn't understand why he'd suddenly become so cold. When she asked what was wrong, he brushed her off impatiently and left without explaining. It was the first time she'd ever seen that look on his face. Trying to smooth things over, Rueying asked him out to dinner. Wu Kai wanted to give her a chance to come clean, so he gently asked if there was anything she wanted to tell him. The sudden question made Rueying nervous, but she insisted she had no secrets. Her denial left him deeply disappointed. Meanwhile, after Rueying abandoned her father, he'd been living with her younger brother Seoyoung. During the 3 years since Rueying married Wu Kai, Seoyoung had fallen in love with a girl named Mei Jing. Just as they were talking about marriage, Seoyoung was horrified to discover that Mei Jing's brother was actually his brother-in-law. He was devastated. To protect his sister's happiness, Seoyoung broke up with Mei Jing, but they were deeply in love, and Mei Jing wouldn't accept the breakup without a real explanation. Seoyoung could only tell her that she was a wealthy heiress while he was just a poor guy who didn't deserve her. To ease Seoyoung's concerns about her family's wealth, Mei Jing asked her brother to help convince him. Soon, Seoyoung got a call from Wu Kai wanting to meet. He immediately refused. He knew if this continued, his brother-in-law would soon discover his relationship with his sister, putting him in an impossible situation. There was another girl, Haoding, who was also in love with Seoyoung. Her father and Mei Jing's father were good friends, so the two girls had known each other since childhood. When Haoding learned that Seoyoung loved Mei Jing, she stepped aside, but her feelings for him never faded. Desperate to make a clean break from Mei Jing, Seoyoung proposed to Haoding instead. Even though Haoding knew Seoyoung didn't love her and that this wasn't fair to Mei Jing, seeing how much pain he was in over the whole situation, she said yes. At the same time, Wu Kai was shocked to discover that the man his younger sister deeply loved was actually Seoyoung, his wife's younger brother. Now it all made sense, why Seoyoung had suddenly broken up with his sister, and why he'd been avoiding him at all costs. After learning the secret, Wu Kai completely fell apart. He knew this was the first time his sister had truly given her heart to someone. As he listened to her pour out her feelings for Seoyoung, each word made him feel worse. All he could do was keep apologizing to her over and over. By the time Wu Kai got home, he was completely wasted. His wife Rueying tried to help him to the bedroom, but he shoved her away. Even when she tried to help him out of his jacket, he looked disgusted. Rueying wanted to know what she'd done wrong, but Wu Kai shot back sarcastically that she was absolutely perfect. How could she possibly be wrong? His bitter sarcasm was more than Rueying could take. She just wanted to know why her husband was treating her this way. Since they'd already come this far, Wu Kai decided to give Rueying a hint. He told her he was in a terrible mood because of what happened with his sister, but Rueying couldn't understand what her sister-in-law's problems had to do with her. So, Wu Kai challenged her, "Did you forget you have a brother?" His words left Rueying speechless. She began to wonder if Wu Kai had found out about her father and brother. Now she was drowning in regret, because of one lie. She couldn't have any contact with her father and brother, and now even her marriage was hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, after Seoyoung decided to date Haoding, their wedding plans quickly moved forward. When Mei Jing heard about it, she couldn't accept it. She went to Seoyoung's place, hoping to talk things through with him one more time. Seoyoung wasn't home. He and Haoding had gone to look at houses nearby. Mei Jing noticed the pink bed and remembered Seoyoung saying it was part of a past he didn't want to talk about. Curious, she looked around the bed and spotted a photo album tucked under the mattress. With nothing else to do, she started flipping through it, only to stumble upon a shocking secret. Seoyoung's sister was actually her own sister-in-law. Mei Jing couldn't believe what she was seeing. She clearly remembered her sister-in-law claiming to be an orphan. All these years, she'd been hiding her true identity. No wonder Seoyoung had suddenly broken up with her out of the blue. Furious and confused, Meijing confronted Seoyoung with the photo evidence. The color drained from his face when he saw it. He had no idea how to explain this to her. Meijing felt utterly betrayed. The sister-in-law she'd trusted most had been lying to her face all along. At that moment, Seoyoung finally broke down in tears. He told Meijing that his sister had her reasons for keeping the secret. She'd been through things that most people couldn't even imagine. He begged Meijing not to blame her, explaining that if this secret got out, it wouldn't just destroy her brother's happiness, it would tear her entire family apart. Exposing the truth would only bring misery to everyone involved. He pleaded with her to let it go. Meijing was devastated. She got completely wasted waiting for Rueying to come home, determined to rip off her fake mask once and for all. But when she thought about her brother's happiness and the pain on Seongyu's face, she couldn't bring herself to say the words. Meanwhile, Wu Kai and Rueying had previously scheduled fertility tests at the hospital. Still angry with Rueying, Wu Kai told her to go alone, but he later found out from someone else that she never showed up. When he was about to confront her about skipping the appointment, Rueying insisted she'd gone. Her constant lies only made Wu Kai despise her more, and his treatment of her grew even colder. Rueying couldn't understand what she'd done wrong. She begged Wu Kai to just tell her what was bothering him. She'd fix whatever it was. In the past, Wu Kai would have been touched by this. Now, all he saw was a two-faced liar. To twist the knife deeper, Wu Kai told her that if she really wanted to show her love, she should quit her law career and become a stay-at-home wife. Rueying was stunned. He knew perfectly well that being a lawyer was her dream. But for his sake, she submitted her resignation without hesitation. She thought the sacrifice would finally make him happy. Instead, when she told him she'd quit, he exploded at her for being so impulsive. How could she just throw away her career like that? He demanded she withdraw her resignation immediately. Rueying's eyes welled up with tears, seeing how cold he'd become. She couldn't even ask him what was really going on. She left feeling completely crushed. As if things couldn't get worse, that evening Wu Kai asked her to pick him up from a bar. But when Rueying arrived, she found him with his arm wrapped around another woman. Rueying was devastated by what she saw, but knowing Wu Kai was still angry with her, she didn't say a word. Rueying assumed Wu Kai was drunk, but when they got home, she realized he was completely sober. She confronted him directly, asking why he would deliberately humiliate her like that. Wu Kai simply admitted he had changed. Hearing this, Rueying's heart sank. She couldn't accept that Wu Kai had fallen out of love so quickly. The next day, Rueying got completely wasted. Wu Kai tenderly carried his wife to bed. Looking at her in that drunken state, his feelings were complicated. He stayed by Rueying's side all night, but afraid she might wake up and find him there, he left the room before she stirred. Wu Kai knew there was no point in continuing to torture Rueying like this. It just so happened that Seonyu and Hao Ting's wedding day had arrived. To get Rueying to come clean on her own, Wu Kai deliberately asked her to accompany his mother to the wedding. Unaware of what awaited her, Rueying arrived at the wedding venue. Seonyu panicked when he saw her. Just as Rueying was about to run into their father, Seonyu quickly called her, urging her to leave. Shocked by the revelation, Rueying fled the hotel before her father could spot her. As Seonyu's wedding ceremony began, Rueying couldn't help but hide in a secluded corner, secretly watching her family from afar. Little did she know that years ago, her father had done the exact same thing, watching his daughter get married from a distance. Rueying went to the riverside and broke down sobbing. Thinking about her husband's recent cold behavior, she fell apart again. Wu Kai had sent Rueying to the wedding to give her one last chance to confess. He knew Rueying had too much pride. If she discovered he already knew her secret, they'd never be able to live as a normal couple again. And that wasn't what Wu Kai wanted. He believed that after today's events, Rueying would finally confess to him, and they could go back to their old life together. Rueying had actually considered coming clean to her husband, but she was terrified of losing Wu Kai completely. A few days earlier, her brother had reached out to meet with her. Seonyu had warned her that no secret stays hidden forever. He advised his sister to have a child. That way, even if her husband discovered the truth, he might forgive her for the sake of their child and stay with her. Rueying didn't know if having a baby with Wu Kai would really save their marriage, but at this point, she was willing to do anything to reconcile with him. So when she got home, she threw away all the birth control pills in her drawer. What she never expected was that Wu Kai would accidentally discover the pills she'd been hiding. At first, Wu Kai worried his wife might be sick, but when he looked them up online, he discovered they were birth control pills. Only then did Wu Kai understand why, after 3 years of marriage, they still had no children. He had been so eager to start a family, yet his wife had been playing him for a fool all along. At that moment, Wu Kai's disgust for Rueying reached its peak. Crushed by the betrayal, he immediately asked for a divorce. His wife, Rueying, was completely stunned by his request. When Wu Kai confronted her with the pills, she just stood there frozen. For years, though he never said it out loud, Wu Kai had desperately wanted a child. Rueying's deception made him feel deeply betrayed. After calming down, Rueying went to the study, hoping she had somehow misheard him. She suggested they take some time to cool off, but for Wu Kai, her lies had already pushed him past the point of no return. He was was determined to go through with the divorce and left the house despite her attempts to stop him. Just when it seemed their relationship was over, an unexpected crisis struck the wealthy family. That day, Mrs. Seoyoung was rehearsing a speech with her company secretary, Secretary Een, who had handwritten notes for revisions. When Mrs. Seoyoung saw the handwriting on the speech, she froze. It was identical to the handwriting on a letter left by Shinkai's birth mother years ago. It turned out that Shinkai, Mrs. Seoyoung's youngest son, wasn't actually her biological child. She had found him on their doorstep 20 years ago with a letter asking someone kind to adopt him. Mr. Seoyoung had wanted to turn the baby over to the police, but Mrs. Seoyoung's maternal instincts kicked in, and she insisted on adopting Shinkai against her husband's wishes. Over the years, Shinkai had become her favorite child. She loved him even more than her own 2 biological children. Still in denial, Mrs. Seoyoung asked Rueying to examine the handwriting. Rueying agreed it looked remarkably similar. Even more distraught, Mrs. Seoyoung confided Shinkai's true origins to her daughter-in-law. Shocked by the revelation, Rueying tried to comfort her mother-in-law, suggesting the similar handwriting might just be a coincidence. The best way to find out the truth would be to invite Secretary Een to the house for a conversation. Taking her daughter-in-law's advice, Mrs. Seoyoung summoned Secretary Een to the house. When she placed both pieces of paper in front of Secretary Een, the woman turned pale as a sheet. Though she said nothing, her expression told the whole story. Mrs. Seoyoung collapsed from the shock, and Secretary Een took the opportunity to slip away. Once she'd somewhat recovered, Mrs. Seoyoung remembered how her husband had opposed the adoption from the start and had never truly accepted Shinkai as his own son all these years. If he found out Shinkai was Secretary Yin's child, he would undoubtedly throw him out immediately. Desperate to protect Shinkai, Mrs. Seoyoung asked Wu Kai and Rueying to quickly find Secretary Yin's ex-husband and quietly handle the situation before Mr. Seoyoung discovered the truth. With such a major crisis unfolding in the family, Wu Kai and Rueying had no choice but to put their divorce on hold. Shortly afterward, Mrs. Seoyoung was shocked to find out the adopted son she'd raised for 20 years was actually her husband's illegitimate child with his female secretary. She was absolutely devastated by this revelation, but her husband insisted it was all a lie because he claimed he had never had an affair with his secretary. When it became impossible to keep hiding the truth any longer, Secretary Een revealed a long-buried secret from the past. 20 years ago, during a company dinner party, Chairman Jiang got so drunk he couldn't make it home, so Secretary Een brought him back to her place. That night, they ended up sleeping together just once, and that encounter resulted in her pregnancy. At the time, Secretary Een was terrified that Chairman Jiang would force her to have an abortion if he found out, so she quietly quit her job and gave birth to the child in secret. However, after the baby was born, she realized she couldn't afford to raise him properly, so she secretly left the child on Chairman Jiang's doorstep. Chairman Jiang refused to believe Secretary Yin's story and decided to get a DNA test to prove that Shinkai wasn't his biological son. But when the results came back, they confirmed that the son he had always disliked was indeed his own flesh and blood. When Mrs. Jiang learned the truth, she broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. She hated her husband and despised herself for being fooled like an idiot for 20 years. Chairman Jiang was also filled with regret and apologized to his wife for the first time, promising to agree to any conditions she might have. However, Chairman Jiang's casual attitude only made Mrs. Jiang even more furious. Meanwhile, Shinkai had no idea what was happening and came home from school as usual, trying to cheer up his mom. But this time, his mother unexpectedly pushed him away. Shinkai was frightened by his mother's sudden coldness and couldn't understand what he had done wrong. Seeing this, Rueying quickly took Shinkai away and lied that his grandmother had gotten into a fight with a friend, which kept Shinkai from becoming suspicious. Worried about her mother-in-law, Rueying stayed in the living room keeping watch. Wu Kai felt heartbroken seeing this. In the middle of the night, Rueying thought everything had calmed down, but suddenly her mother-in-law ran out of the house like she had lost her mind. Wu Yingyi immediately chased after her. Mrs. Jiang was running frantically through the snow wearing only light clothing and slippers. Rueying quietly followed behind her until Mrs. Jiang finally collapsed from exhaustion, crouching on the ground and sobbing hysterically. Rueying tenderly draped her own coat over her mother-in-law's shoulders and stayed by her side in silence. When Wu Kai discovered that both his mother and Rueying were missing, he rushed out to find them. By the time he located them, his mother had cried herself to sleep from exhaustion. Wu Kai helped his mother into the car and noticed that her feet were frostbitten, while Rueying was also shivering from the cold. Having given her coat to his mother, Rueying's care for his mother deeply moved Wu Kai, and for the first time, his determination to get divorced began to waver. After confirming that Shinkai was indeed his son, Chairman Jiang immediately wanted Secretary Een to leave the company. However, now that things had reached this point, Secretary Een wasn't about to give up so easily. Right after Chairman Jiang went to confront Secretary Een, she showed up at the Jiang family home. She had come to take back her son from Mrs. Jiang. Mrs. Jiang was absolutely livid when she heard this. In a fit of rage, she slapped the shameless woman across the face. Furious, she declared that Secretary Een would never simply waltz away with Shinkai. She would keep him close and make his life miserable. She wanted to see Secretary Een weep tears of blood. Mrs. Jiang was so caught up in in her anger that she didn't notice Shinkai had already come home. When he overheard that Mrs. Jiang wasn't his biological mother, he was too stunned to speak. Terrified, he turned and fled the house. Shinkai ended up at a bar, drowning his sorrows, but Secretary Een tracked him down through his credit card charges. She tried to reconnect with him as his mother, but Shinkai wanted nothing to do with her. He bolted from her presence in a panic. Not wanting Secretary Een to find him again, Shinkai used his last $15 in cash to check into a cheap motel. As he lay on the bed, he desperately missed his adoptive mother. During the days he was missing, his family was worried sick, and Mrs. Jiang was absolutely devastated, barely getting through each day. Rueying feared her mother-in-law's grief would destroy her health, so she took her to the same musical that Wu Kai had once taken her to. Just as Rueying had done before, her mother-in-law got on stage and played the drums. After venting her emotions, Mrs. Jiang felt much better. Wu Kai happened to witness this scene. 3 years ago, during Rueying's darkest period, Wu Kai had brought her to this very place. He could still vividly remember the smile on her face that day. But now their marriage was hanging by a thread. The more Wu Kai thought about it, the more his heart ached. Afterwards, Rueying took her mother-in-law out for burgers. Mrs. Jiang took a bite but couldn't swallow. Burgers were Shinkai's favorite food. She wondered if he was getting enough to eat out there on his own. Meanwhile, Shinkai was completely broke and had taken shelter in an abandoned building. Thinly dressed, he was shivering from the cold. Suddenly, he heard familiar footsteps approaching. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but when he opened his eyes, his mother had really come for him. He fell to his knees before her, apologizing over and over. Faced with this sweet boy who broke her heart, Mrs. Jiang couldn't hold back anymore. She couldn't bear to see the child she'd raised suffering like this. In the end, Mrs. Jiang accepted Shinkai back. As mother and son arrived home, they ran into Rueying, who had just gotten off work. She excitedly hugged her brother-in-law. Seeing her mother-in-law let go of her resentment and bring Shinkai home, Rueying suddenly thought about her own situation. If she came clean about her own secret, would Wu Kai and his parents forgive her too? However, what Rueying didn't expect was that her romantic rival Shan Yu accidentally learned her secret through Mei Jing. Thrilled by this discovery, the rival immediately confronted Rueying and laid her secret bare. Rueying was initially shocked, but she quickly regained her composure. She asked Shan Yu what she hoped to gain from this revelation. Shan Yu didn't beat around the bush. She demanded that Rueying come clean to Wu Kai's family about her background and divorce him immediately. To her surprise, Rueying remained perfectly calm. She agreed to tell Wu Kai's family the truth, but not now. The family was already emotionally drained from dealing with Shinkai's situation, and she didn't want to burden them further. She would choose the right time to confess. Besides, she was certain Shan Yu wouldn't expose the secret herself. After all, she wouldn't want to appear as the vindictive woman in Wu Kai's eyes. Shan Yu reluctantly agreed to wait. Meanwhile, after everything that happened with Shinkai, Wu Kai realized he couldn't live without Rueying and wanted to help her protect her secret, but Rueying told him she had nothing left to hold on to. After leaving Wu Kai's side, she broke down crying alone in a corner. Watching his wife's retreating figure, Wu Kai was filled with regret. When Rueying returned and headed to the study to sleep, Wu Kai tried to stop her, but she pushed his hand away. As she turned to leave, his mother happened to witness the scene. Mrs. Jiang couldn't understand why the once loving couple was suddenly sleeping in separate rooms. She remembered visiting Rueying's law firm earlier and discovering that Wu Kai's childhood sweetheart, Shan Yu, worked there too. After some digging, she learned that Shan Yu had deliberately arranged for Rueying to join the same firm. This made Mrs. Jiang suspect that Shan Yu had been trying to sabotage Wu Kai and Rueying's marriage. Determined to stand up for her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Jiang confronted Shan Yu and firmly warned her to stay away from her son and not even think about replacing her daughter-in-law. Shan Yu felt utterly wronged. She tried to endure Mrs. Jiang's scolding, but when she heard her praising Rueying as an orphan who was incredibly kind, honest, and incapable of doing anything wrong, Shan Yu couldn't take it anymore. In a fit of anger, she blurted out Rueying's secret. Meanwhile, Wu Kai had made up his mind. He'd married Rueying for one reason only, to make her happy forever. Whatever her reasons for deceiving him back then, he didn't care anymore. All he wanted now was to protect her secret and continue their happy life together. But just as he'd resolved this, their parents summoned them both. Before the couple could figure out what was happening, Chairman Jiang furiously demanded to know why Rueying had deceived them. She was at a loss for words, but what shocked her even more was how calmly her husband Wu Kai reacted to the news. It was clear he'd known all along. Rueying's mind went blank as everything clicked into place. Worried she couldn't handle the stress, Wu Kai quickly took her back to their room. Finally, she understood why he'd been so distant lately. The shame was overwhelming. She couldn't face her in-laws anymore, couldn't stay in this house another minute. She confessed everything to them but didn't explain why she'd lied. Instead, she pulled out divorce papers, a decision she'd made without even discussing it with Wu Kai. He was stunned, unable to accept losing her, but Rueying's mind was made up. She packed her bags and left immediately. After that, Wu Kai couldn't reach her no matter how hard he tried. When he called her company, he discovered she'd already quit. With no idea where she'd gone, he was worried sick. Meanwhile, ever since Seoyoung married Houting, Uncle Lee's spirits had lifted considerably. He'd even found a job at a furniture store. Though Seoyoung hadn't initially been in love with Houting, he'd gradually fallen for her as they spent more time together. The family might not have been wealthy, but they were genuinely happy. Just when Uncle Lee thought this happiness would last forever, his son-in-law showed up at his door. The moment he saw Wu Kai, his legs turned to jelly. He stammered, asking why Wu Kai had come. Seeing his father-in-law's panic, Wu Kai realized Rueying hadn't come home. Not wanting to raise suspicions, he made up an excuse about just passing by. Days passed with Wu Kai lost in thoughts of Rueying, so distracted he could barely focus during meetings. Then, right after one meeting ended, his secretary informed him that Rueying had called. After much deliberation, Rueying had decided she owed Wu Kai a proper apology. But Wu Kai felt that things had gone too far. Whatever her reasons for hiding the truth, she needed to come clean. If she'd just explain everything properly, he could let it go. But Rueying's fierce pride wouldn't let her reopen old wounds. Her refusal to talk only made Wu Kai angrier. "Don't you feel sorry for your father?" he demanded. "The man you abandoned? Who's been living in fear of being discovered?" Rueying was confused. "Have you met my father?" Wu Kai hesitated, unsure whether to tell her. But when she kept pressing, he finally revealed the truth. The person who had once saved his life was her father. Rueying felt like she'd been struck by lightning. She fled to the bathroom in despair, sobbing her heart out. It turned out her father had always known that her story about studying abroad was a complete lie, yet to protect her marriage, he'd pretended to be none the wiser. Overwhelmed with guilt and remorse toward her father, Rueying somehow managed to compose herself when facing her husband Wu Kai again, not letting a trace of sadness show. Though Wu Kai tried to win her back, Rueying knew that once her secret came to light, she'd have neither the courage nor the dignity to continue their life together. So she forced herself to coldly tell him not to contact her again unless he was ready to sign the divorce papers, then walked away without looking back. Meanwhile, Rueying's father accidentally learned from a phone conversation between his daughter-in-law Houting and his wife that Rueying had run away from home. Uncle Lee panicked immediately, wondering if his son-in-law had discovered his true identity. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became, so he rushed to his son-in-law's house and waited outside until 1 a.m., but his daughter never came home. At the same time, Houting was tidying up her father-in-law's room when she stumbled upon a box filled with newspaper clippings. When she showed it to her husband Seoyoung, he was completely stunned. His father had known about Rueying's marriage all along and had been collecting every newspaper article about his brother-in-law in this box. Seoyoung couldn't imagine the pain his father must have endured all these years, ruthlessly abandoned by his daughter, yet still quietly protecting her from the shadows. He blamed his father for keeping everything bottled up inside, for bearing all that pain alone without saying a word. Seeing that Seoyoung had discovered his secret, Uncle Lee became so overwhelmed that he fainted. When Uncle Lee finally came to, his first concern was whether there was any news about Rueying. Both father and son, knowing full well they'd been abandoned by her, continued to hide the truth from each other, all for the sake of Rueying's happiness. Meanwhile, Rueying had been summoned to Mrs. Zhang's home. Facing her mother-in-law, she was consumed with guilt, apologizing for all the lies she'd told. Mrs. Zhang felt like she couldn't breathe from the heartache. She had just suffered through her husband's betrayal, and it was Rueying who had helped her through those desperate times. Now to discover that Rueying had deceived her too made her feel even more hopeless. No matter how much she loved Rueying, she couldn't forgive this deception. Rueying knew she had no right to ask for forgiveness. She apologized once more to her mother-in-law and promised she would divorce Wu Kai as soon as possible. At the same time, Uncle Lee learned that his daughter was about to get a divorce. Uncle Lee was deeply worried about his daughter. He went to her company, and as fate would have it, ran right into Rueying. She was shocked. She never expected her father to know where she worked. It was their first real meeting in 3 years, and the awkwardness between them was palpable. Her father carefully broke the silence, urging Rueying to swallow her pride and reconcile with her husband Wu Kai. After all, Wu Kai was an exceptional husband, hard to come by. If necessary, he said, he'd even get on his knees before her in-laws to apologize. He meant to show his love for Rueying, but to her, it felt like unbearable pressure. She confronted him. If he really wanted to protect her, why had he been secretly watching her? Why did he risk his life to save Wu Kai? And why on earth was he working at Wu Kai's company? Only then did her father realize that Wu Kai had known his identity all along. After saying her piece, Rueying walked away. Consumed with guilt, her father followed her out, wanting to take her home. But Rueying told him to stop interfering in her life. As she drove past the bus stop where her father was waiting, she hardened her heart and hit the gas, leaving him behind. Uncle Lee ended up alone at a small bar, drowning his sorrows. Glass after glass, he tried to numb himself. The thought that his daughter's marriage was falling apart because of him filled him with self-loathing. He hated himself for always being a burden to his children. Even his son Seoyoung, after learning their father was working at his brother-in-law's company, thought he'd lost his mind and couldn't help but criticize him. But who could truly understand Uncle Lee's struggles and the pain he carried? Meanwhile, Chairman Jiang decided to cut their losses before things got worse. Wu Kai and Rueying should divorce immediately. The family was devastated by the news. Shen Kai sympathized with Rueying and suggested they should at least hear her side of the story. Meijing also thought they were being too hasty. But Chairman Jiang was firm. Regardless of one's background, no one should treat their father that way. Such a woman didn't deserve to be their daughter-in-law. Later, Wu Kai asked Rueying to meet. He wanted to give her one last chance to explain why she'd lied. But Rueying's last shred of pride wouldn't let her revisit those painful memories from her past. She remained firm in her decision to divorce. Wu Kai was utterly disappointed in Rueying. Looking at the divorce papers before him, he finally made up his mind. He signed the documents and was about to go meet Rueying when he stepped out of his office and found his father-in-law waiting for him. Unable to bear watching the young couple sacrifice their marriage because of him, her father decided to tell his son-in-law, Wu Kai, the truth that his daughter Rueying refused to reveal. Before Wu Kai ever met Rueying, her father had stolen her college tuition money to gamble. Her mother died during surgery because they couldn't afford proper treatment. Hounded by loan sharks, he fled to Jeju Island to hide. Rueying couldn't stand to see her family crushed under debt, so she dropped out of high school to deliver food. Every penny of her younger brother's school fees came from her hard work. Her father tried running a business, but ended up losing even the money Rueying had scraped together to pay off his debts. Desperate and out of options, he ended up working as a host at a nightclub, bringing even more shame to his daughter. At an age when she should have been enjoying her youth, Rueying was carrying unbearable pressure. She could barely breathe under the weight of it all. Then suddenly, Wu Kai appeared in her life, a man she could lean on. Was she supposed to give up this rare chance at happiness for her worthless father? Hearing this story broke Wu Kai's heart. In that moment, he finally understood his wife. Standing at their doorstep, memories of when they first met seemed like yesterday, but everything had changed. He sat in his car sobbing uncontrollably. Only after losing her did he realize how much she meant to him. Meanwhile, after 3 years of keeping her secret, Rueying felt an unexpected relief now that the truth was out. She could finally visit her brother at the hospital where he worked without hiding anymore. When Wu Kai couldn't find Rueying, he went to her brother Seoyoung. Wu Kai knew Seoyoung had distanced himself from his own sister Meijing because of him, and he felt terrible for breaking up their relationship. He told Seoyoung he'd gotten the answers he needed from Rueying's father. Seoyoung didn't know what to say. Wu Kai asked for Seoyoung's help to heal Rueying's emotional wounds, but Seoyoung didn't want him disrupting his sister's life anymore. He knew his sister had never truly been happy these past few years. Seoyoung understood Rueying's personality perfectly. Even if Wu Kai could forgive her, her past mistakes wouldn't disappear. Facing Wu Kai, she would forever live like a criminal. So Seoyoung hoped Wu Kai would respect his sister's decision. Reflecting on their 3-year marriage, Wu Kai began to realize that what seemed like happiness had actually been an enormous burden for Rueying. He used discussing the divorce as an excuse to meet with her one more time. Their reunion was painfully awkward. Wu Kai made one last attempt to save their marriage. He promised never to bring up the past and said he'd find a way to convince his parents. He just wanted to start fresh with Rueying. But her feelings were exactly as Seoyoung had described. She wanted to permanently erase those painful memories from her heart. Hearing this, Wu Kai knew he could no longer win Rueying back. He had no choice but to respect her wishes. They went to the courthouse and ended their 3-year marriage, becoming familiar strangers. As they parted ways, Wu Kai couldn't help but look back, but Rueying walked away without turning around. Hurt, Wu Kai removed his wedding ring, unaware that Rueying was only pretending to be strong in front of him. When she returned to the place filled with their happy memories, everything from their past was still vivid in her mind. Realizing it was all over, Rueying broke down and sobbed uncontrollably. After the divorce, she decided to start fresh. She changed her hairstyle, cleaned out her car, and was ready to say goodbye to the past for good. With this weight lifted off her shoulders, Rueying thought of her father, whom she had abandoned years ago. She went to visit him, and Uncle Lee was both happy and anxious to see his daughter after 3 years. He feared she might be bringing bad news. Sure enough, she told him she had gotten divorced. Uncle Lee was shocked and upset, frantically urging Rueying to go back and reconcile with Wu Kai. He couldn't understand why she had acted so impulsively, why she hadn't asked for her in-laws' forgiveness. How could she let go of such a good man like Wu Kai? But Rueying hadn't come to hear this. She came to apologize for her past mistakes. Her father lost his temper in his emotional state, and seeing that he still couldn't understand her, Rueying stormed out. They parted on bad terms. Soon after, Rueying opened a law firm with some classmates. Coincidentally, she ran into a male classmate who had secretly liked her in high school. The 3 old friends were thrilled to reunite after so many years. To Rueying's surprise, Wu Kai showed up with flowers to congratulate her. Before they could exchange more than a few words, a client arrived at the office. Wu Kai made some polite small talk and left, which caught Rueying off guard. The client turned out to be one of Wu Kai's subordinates, and without realizing it, Rueying found herself working with Wu Kai for the first time. She had expected him to try to win her back, but throughout the entire day, Wu Kai kept things strictly professional. His sudden change shocked her. That evening, after dropping Rueying off, Wu Kai went straight to see his former father-in-law. Uncle Lee was confused about why Wu Kai had come to see him, until Wu Kai unexpectedly called him Dad, leaving Uncle Lee flustered. Wu Kai explained that he had agreed to the divorce only to ease Rueying's guilt. Though they had signed the papers, their love story wasn't over. Uncle Lee finally understood what Wu Kai meant. When Rueying's birthday came around, her classmates took her out partying until late. On the way home, her male classmate was taking photos of her when Wu Kai happened to see them. The atmosphere instantly turned awkward. As her ex-husband Wu Kai approached, Rueying suddenly felt a pang of guilt. Though Wu Kai was clearly burning with jealousy, he forced himself to smile. He cheerfully handed her roses and a birthday gift, wishing her a happy birthday. He didn't ask about her relationship with the man beside her, he just politely said hello and walked away. His reaction actually left Rueying feeling oddly unsettled. When Rueying got home and opened Wukai's gift, she found a thermos filled with seaweed soup he'd made himself, and an arm-shaped pillow, because she used to fall asleep every night resting on his arm. She had to admit, these thoughtful gifts really touched her heart. Meanwhile, Wukai couldn't stop thinking about that man with Rueying, and his mood was terrible. He had to pull over just to calm down. But whenever he remembered Rueying's happy smile, he couldn't help feeling a little joy despite himself. After that, Wukai kept finding excuses to see Rueying, telling her he wanted them to be friends from now on. Gradually, their relationship started to thaw. Just then, Rueying suddenly got a call from Chairman Jiang. When she rushed to the police station, she was shocked to find her former mother-in-law had been arrested. After some digging, she learned that ever since the revelations about Qinkai's birth mother and Rueying's marriage deception, her mother-in-law had suffered a serious mental breakdown. She'd been going to shows everywhere to distract herself from the pain. At one performance, she met a charismatic magician who lured her to a hotel room. Then the magician's wife burst in with the police, and Mrs. Jiang was arrested on adultery charges. When Chairman Jiang arrived at the station, his first words weren't to ask if his wife was okay, but to worry whether she'd exposed her identity and damaged the company's reputation. Mrs. Jiang was deeply disappointed. To make matters worse, Chairman Jiang dumped the whole mess on Rueying, telling her to pay whatever it took to keep things quiet. This left Mrs. Jiang feeling utterly humiliated and completely disillusioned with their marriage. The very next morning, Mrs. Jiang called a family meeting, pulled out divorce papers, and coldly announced that if Chairman Jiang didn't sign within a week, she'd take him to court. Then she grabbed her suitcase and walked out, leaving the children stunned and at a loss. Meanwhile, Rueying met with the magician's wife, who immediately demanded $1 million. Drawing on her years of experience as a lawyer, Rueying poked holes in the woman's story within minutes. Not only did she refuse to pay a cent, but she also uncovered the real mastermind behind the scheme, President N, one of Chairman Jiang's business partners. It turned out President N had screwed up a major order for the company, and when Chairman Jiang made him take responsibility for it, and decided to get revenge with this dirty trick. When Chairman Jiang learned his business dealings had hurt his wife, he called to apologize, but she made it crystal clear, this time, divorce was non-negotiable. After years away from home, a woman finally decided to return to spend the new year with her family. But standing at the doorstep, Rueying hesitated, unsure whether she should go in. Just then, her sister-in-law Haoding happened to come out to take out the trash. Though they'd never met before, Haoding immediately recognized her as Rueying, the sister she'd heard about, and warmly welcomed her inside. Seeing his daughter Rueying return, Uncle Li was so overwhelmed with emotion that he couldn't find the words to say. Rueying then helped Haoding prepare dinner. Haoding proudly told Rueying that she'd learned to do all the housework after getting married, and that her father-in-law had taught her everything. She even showed Rueying the bank book that he'd entrusted to her a few days earlier. After hearing Haoding's story, Rueying learned that their father's monthly allowance was less than $150. This revelation broke her heart. After paying respects at their late mother's grave, Rueying turned to leave immediately. Seoyoung wanted to go after his sister, but their father stopped him. That evening, Haoding thoughtfully prepared a special New Year's dinner just for Rueying and asked Seoyoung to deliver it to her. Her wife's kindness deeply touched Seoyoung. Rueying was also pleased to receive what her sister-in-law had prepared for her. She urged her brother to always treat Haoding well. Seoyoung assured his sister that he and Haoding had a wonderful relationship and showed her photos of Haoding with their father. Seeing how happy her father and brother were, Rueying couldn't help but smile. But when she flipped to the last photo, she was shocked to see her former sister-in-law, Meijing. Rueying froze. She couldn't understand how her ex-husband's sister would know her family and be so close to her brother. Seoyoung hastily grabbed the phone back, claiming that he and Meijing were just colleagues in the same hospital department. But his nervous reaction made Rueying suspicious. She suddenly remembered that during a fight with Wukai when they were going through a rough patch, he had argued with her about his sister's breakup. At the time, Rueying hadn't understood why Wukai was so upset. A bold suspicion crossed Rueying's mind. Could her brother have been the one who broke up with Meijing? She immediately called Wukai to confirm who Meijing had been dating back then. Wukai fell silent at the question, and his reaction confirmed Rueying's suspicions. Rueying never imagined that her brother had given up a 3-year relationship to protect her marriage. She was consumed with guilt, not knowing how she could ever face her brother again. Rueying shut herself in at home. Thinking about everything that had happened over the years, she felt such pain that she could barely breathe. Wukai, worried she might do something desperate, rushed to her door. But Rueying didn't want to see him. Wukai kept knocking persistently, making such a commotion that the neighbors complained, forcing Rueying to open the door. They went outside to talk. Rueying told Wukai bluntly that she didn't want to see him anymore. After all, Wukai was like a mirror reflecting her past. Seeing him only reminded her of all her shameful history. Seeing his ex-wife in such agony, Wukai's heart ached as he promised never to appear before Rueying again. Rueying learned that her younger brother had broken up with his ex-sister-in-law to help help her pursue her own happiness, which filled her with immense guilt. Her brother, Seoyoung, tried to comfort her, telling her not to blame herself, especially since he was now happily married to Howding. He urged his sister to let go of her guilt and recognize how much Woo Kai, her ex-husband, truly cared for her. After all, Woo Kai's sense of betrayal was probably even stronger than her wounded pride. Whatever had happened, she'd chosen to marry Woo Kai 3 years ago, and he'd sacrificed so much for her. The least she could do now was consider his feelings. If she couldn't move past her inner demons, their father would continue living with his own crushing guilt. Rueying listened, her heart breaking all over again. Soon after, Seoyoung invited Howding to see a musical. She was over the moon. This would be their first real date since getting married. She even dressed up for the occasion. But just as they arrived at the theater, she overheard Seoyoung on the phone, saying he was only going through the motions and didn't really want to be there. Terrified of hearing more, Howding fled the theater. The truth was, she'd never felt secure in their marriage. She knew Seoyoung had only married her to help Meijing move on, so she constantly questioned whether his kindness was genuine or just an act. Wandering aimlessly through an alley in distress, she suddenly realized someone was following her. She turned to see a menacing-looking man and froze in terror. Meanwhile, Seoyoung discovered his wife was missing and frantically called her phone, only to have a strange man answer. The man tried to explain he'd just found the phone, but it died before he could finish. Convinced Howding was in danger, Seoyoung rushed to the police station, demanding they investigate immediately. But since she'd been missing for less than 24 hours, they couldn't file a report. Desperate, he called his sister Rueying for advice. When she saw how frantic he was, she couldn't help but laugh. It turned out Howding had nowhere else to go, so she'd gone to Rueying's place. Knowing there must have been a misunderstanding, Rueying told her brother to wait at the station. She'd bring Howding right over. When they arrived at the police station, Howding panicked, thinking something terrible had happened to Seoyoung. She rushed inside to find him, and they both stood there, stunned to see each other. Learning that she'd left because of what she'd overheard, Seoyoung was furious. He explained he'd been complaining about a difficult patient at the hospital and told her never to disappear like that again. For the first time since their wedding, Howding truly felt his genuine concern and love for her. Tears streaming down her face, she was overwhelmed with emotion. Seoyoung pulled his wife into his arms, warning her never to vanish from his life again. Watching her brother and sister-in-law's tender moment, Rueying felt some of her guilt begin to lift. Not long after, Rueying went hiking, but just as she was about to head back down, she ran into 2 thugs. Danger was imminent, and in desperation, Rueying called out her ex-husband Woo Kai's name. To her complete surprise, Woo Kai actually appeared. Rueying was both moved and confused, wondering how he could possibly be there. Woo Kai explained that Rueying's classmate had told him about her solo hiking trip. Worried she might run into trouble, he'd rushed over without even changing his clothes. When he saw her sitting on the mountain lost in thought, he'd waited silently in the cold for an hour, which was why he could show up the instant she was in danger. A wave of warmth swept through Rueying's heart. On the way down, Woo Kai accidentally slipped and hurt his foot. Seeing his injured palm, Rueying felt terrible and had to support him as they made their way down the mountain step by step. This was the closest they'd been since their divorce. Woo Kai couldn't resist reaching out to touch Rueying's forehead, but seeing the awkwardness in her eyes, he quickly pulled his hand back. Rueying took him to the hospital, where they found it was just a simple sprain. Still worried, she wanted to ask her brother to find a specialist for a second opinion. Everyone thought she was being way too dramatic. Not having seen her former sister-in-law in ages, Rueying wanted to take this chance to apologize to Meijing. Meijing knew what she was going to say and cut her off before she could start, saying the family had been pretty disappointed to be deceived by the sister-in-law they trusted most. But over time, Meijing had come to understand Rueying's position and didn't want to see her treating herself like a criminal. Meijing's words made Rueying realize that everyone else had already let go of their resentment. She was the only one still stuck in the shadows. Meanwhile, when Uncle Lee learned that his daughter's company had just opened and wasn't on solid ground yet, he went to his room and pulled out the money Rueying had given him 3 years ago to pay off his debts. He figured this was when his daughter needed help most, so he wanted to support her. He went to Rueying's office, catching her completely off guard. Uncle Lee handed her an envelope that Rueying had long forgotten about. When she opened it, she realized it was the money she'd once given her father to pay his debts. She couldn't believe he'd never used it, which meant he'd worked all these years to clear his debts on his own. The thought made Rueying both angry and heartbroken. Since they just moved into a new place, Rueying was organizing things with her classmate when the classmate spotted the guest list from Rueying's wedding. Rueying explained it was all fake, since she'd claimed to be an orphan back then. She had almost no guests on her side. Her mother-in-law thought that looked bad, so she'd hired an agency to bring in some temps to pose as wedding guests. The classmate had never heard of such a thing and started flipping through the list out of curiosity, only to spot Rueying's father's name. At first, Rueying thought it was just someone with the same name, but remembering that her father had known about her wedding all along made her uneasy. She tracked down the company that had handled her wedding and, sure enough, found her father's resume there. His last temp job had been at her own wedding. When she learned the truth, Rueying completely broke down. She'd always thought she was the most wronged person in the family, but now she finally understood. Her brother had given up his own love for her sake, while their father had been silently bearing everything alone in his heart. With trembling hands, she pulled out the wedding invitation she'd written to her father as a child. Back then, she'd promised him that he would walk her down the aisle, but instead, she'd lied and broken his heart. She remembered hiding outside the chapel during her brother's wedding, watching from afar, the pain so intense she could barely breathe. Now she truly understood the desperation her father must have felt, watching his own daughter get married but unable to approach her or acknowledge their bond. She went straight to her father's house. Before Uncle Lee could even grasp what was happening, Rueying fell to her knees before him, sobbing, begging for his forgiveness. In that moment, her father fought back his tears. He told her that seeing her wedding was actually what made him finally understand. While he hadn't physically abandoned his wife and children, he'd been emotionally absent, hurting them in his heart all along. So he completely understood why she'd done what she did. Her father didn't utter a single word of blame, which only made Rueying feel worse. In that moment, she let go of all her resentment toward him. After 3 years, father and daughter finally reconciled. Houting overheard the conversation between her sister-in-law and father-in-law. As soon as Seoyoung came home, she told him everything. He couldn't believe it. He rushed to his sister's place and sure enough, found their father's name on the guest list. Rueying told her brother that she'd also secretly watched his wedding, just like their father had watched hers. Her only brother was getting married, and she could only hide in the shadows. The pain had been suffocating. Now she realized their father must have felt 100 times worse. When Seoyoung got home, he went straight to his father's room and wrapped him in a hug. A man visits his ex-wife's company, only to run into her first love. Since they'd met once before, the atmosphere turns awkward the moment they see each other again. With jealousy written all over his face, Woo Kai asks Sungtae if he has a girlfriend, offering to set him up if he doesn't. But Sungtae turns down the offer, saying he already has someone he likes, and then glances at Rueying. This makes Woo Kai think he's talking about Rueying, and he storms off in frustration. Actually, Sungtae was just messing with him, but Rueying knows Woo Kai must be jealous. To avoid any misunderstanding, she quickly calls him and suggests they have dinner together. Woo Kai claims he's already meeting a client that evening. That night, when Rueying is out with her colleagues, she happens to spot Woo Kai, and he's having dinner with Seoyoung. Seeing them laughing and chatting together, Rueying feels her blood boil. When she heads to the restroom, Woo Kai follows her and explains that he told a white lie because he was worried she'd get the wrong idea. He adds that Seoyoung is flying back to America tomorrow and just wanted to say goodbye. The truth is, Seoyoung orchestrated this whole thing as a parting gift to Rueying. She knows they can't let go of each other and hopes this will help Rueying open her heart to Woo Kai. Woo Kai then sits down across from Rueying, and the first thing she does is explain that Sungtae has had a girlfriend for ages. In the past, she probably wouldn't have bothered clarifying this. After everything that's happened, Rueying is learning to change, after all. How can anyone know what you're thinking if you don't speak up? With this mutual understanding, their relationship starts to thaw. Meanwhile, Seoyoung sees that his dad and sister have patched things up. To bring the family closer together, he and Hoting organize a family trip. Mr. Lee and Rueying are thrilled when they hear about it. During a rest stop, Mr. Lee goes to buy Rueying's favorite walnut bread, but just as he's about to head back, he's suddenly hit with severe stomach pain and collapses to the ground. Rueying panicked when she saw her father in such a state. Her brother Seoyoung, a doctor, pressed on their father's abdomen, causing him to cry out in agony. Seoyoung immediately recognized the severity of the situation and knew they needed to get him to the hospital right away. The test results revealed peritonitis with complications. The inflammation had already spread throughout his organs, requiring immediate surgery. The doctor explained this was likely caused by a previous abdominal or back injury, but Seoyoung had never heard of his father being hurt before. He rushed to ask if his dad had ever been in an accident. Uncle Lee suddenly remembered being hit by a car last year while saving Woo Kai, but when he glanced at Rueying, he clammed up and refused to answer. That's when Rueying remembered, last October, her father had saved Woo Kai. She quickly told Seoyoung about it. When Mei Jing learned that Uncle Lee had been injured while saving her brother, she immediately called Woo Kai. Upon hearing about his father-in-law's condition, Woo Kai was stunned. If something happened to him, how could he ever face Rueying again? By the time Woo Kai arrived, his father-in-law was already in surgery. He frantically asked what exactly had gone wrong, but Seoyoung didn't know how to explain. Mei Jing pulled her brother aside and told him that the car accident had caused internal injuries to Uncle Lee. The stress and overwork he'd endured since then had worsened the inflammation, leading to his current state. Rueying was devastated to realize that all the pressure she'd put on her father over the years had contributed to his condition. Tears of guilt streamed down her face as she regretted how she'd treated him. Woo Kai also regretted not insisting his father-in-law get checked out after the accident. Maybe this could have been prevented. Fortunately, the surgery was successful, and Uncle Lee was out of immediate danger. Once things had calmed down, Woo Kai visited his father-in-law. Knowing he was responsible for Uncle Lee's condition weighed heavily on him. But Uncle Lee had never blamed Woo Kai. In fact, he was grateful that he genuinely cared for Rueying. That night, Uncle Lee's condition took a turn for the worse. Unable to breathe on his own, his body convulsed uncontrollably. The medical team quickly intubated him. Watching her father suffer was unbearable for Rueying. She desperately wished she could take his pain away. Even as he fought to stay conscious, Uncle Lee's eyes remained fixed on Rueying, still trying to apologize to her with his last bit of strength. As her father was wheeled back into into surgery, Rueying broke down again. After 3 long years, they had finally mended their relationship, and now they were facing the possibility of losing each other forever. She couldn't accept this reality. She found herself wishing she'd never married Wu Kai. If she hadn't kept the marriage a secret from her father, none of this would have happened. Wu Kai overheard these words and quietly closed the door, his heart sinking. The guilt of knowing Uncle Li's illness stemmed from saving him was crushing. He understood all too well that if Uncle Li died, he and Rueying would never be able to face each other without this shadow between them. When the divorced woman returned to her former in-laws' home for the first time, her unexpected visit caught them completely off guard. Rueying had come with a purpose, to offer a heartfelt apology for concealing the truth about her father 3 years ago and to explain why she had lied back then. She wasn't seeking forgiveness, she simply couldn't live with the regret of leaving things unexplained. Her gesture surprised the elderly couple. Meanwhile, Howding's mother went to visit Uncle Li, their in-law, only to learn from Howding that this devoted father had not only witnessed his daughter's wedding ceremony but had also helped keep her secret to ensure her happiness. He had been quietly watching over his daughter ever since. Moved by Uncle Li's story, Howding's mother immediately shared this with Chairman Jiang and his wife. Upon hearing this, the Jiangs were deeply grateful to Uncle Li and forgave Rueying for her deception. They then called in Rueying and Wu Kai, hoping more than anything that the two would remarry. To their surprise, it wasn't Rueying who refused first, it was Wu Kai. He angrily told his parents that neither he nor Rueying had any intention of getting back together and asked them to stop meddling in their affairs. He then escorted Rueying out. She was taken aback by his cold attitude. After she left, Wu Kai learned from his parents that his father-in-law had attended his wedding and had known exactly who Wu Kai was when he risked his life to save him. This revelation only deepened Wu Kai's guilt. He couldn't bear to imagine how he would face Rueying if her father had died. From that day on, Wu Kai stayed away from Rueying, choosing instead to watch over her from a distance. His sudden disappearance left Rueying feeling empty inside. She wanted to call him but didn't know what to say, so she listened to her father's voice recordings over and over to distract herself, unaware that Wu Kai was standing outside her door. Seeing her in such pain, Wu Kai believed he was the cause of all her suffering. Unable to find the courage to comfort her, he quietly slipped away. Wu Kai ended up at a street food stall, drowning his sorrows in alcohol. In his drunken state, he unconsciously wandered to Rueying's doorstep. When he saw her, he suddenly realized where he was and turned to leave without a word. Worried about him, Rueying offered to take him home, but Wu Kai flatly refused. He'd rather call a designated driver than let her accompany him. Unable to hold back any longer, Rueying's emotions finally erupted. She confronted him about why he hadn't contacted her or come to see her. Wu Kai admitted he'd been terrified that her father wouldn't wake up, which made it impossible for him to face her. He also believed that seeing him would only remind her of the accident, so he couldn't bring himself to appear before her. Suddenly remembering what she had said the day before, Rueying realized Wu Kai had misunderstood. He thought she blamed him. Not wanting to lose him like this, she immediately ran after him and told him she had never blamed him for anything. She had married him because she truly loved him. The only reason she hadn't revealed her identity was her fear of losing him, and that's why she had never dared to have children. Without him, she hadn't had a single peaceful day. Finally understanding Rueying's true feelings, and with all misunderstandings cleared up, the two people who genuinely loved each other ran toward each other once more, embracing passionately in a moment of pure joy and relief. Meanwhile, there's great news from the hospital. Dad's inflammation levels have been dropping steadily, and he's finally woken up. When Rueying and Wu Kai heard the wonderful news, they rushed to the hospital immediately. Rueying collapsed onto her father with tears streaming down her face, grateful that he hadn't left her behind. Seeing his children gathered around him, Dad couldn't help but tear up too. Soon the day came for Uncle Li to be discharged from the hospital. He was surprised that Chairman Jiang personally came to pick him up. This was actually their first formal meeting in years. Chairman Jiang was deeply grateful to his in-law for saving his son's life, and he'd also come with something he wanted to discuss. He knew Uncle Li must have been heartbroken about missing his daughter's wedding as a father, and Rueying had also missed her brother's wedding. So he suggested the kids have another wedding ceremony. Uncle Li was thrilled with the idea. The wedding day arrived quickly. Uncle Li was both excited and incredibly nervous. This was the promise he'd made to his daughter years ago. As he approached his son-in-law, Uncle Li gripped Wu Kai's hand tightly. He knew that besides himself, Wu Kai would be the man who loved Rueying most in this world. To make up for past regrets, Seoyoung and Howding also held their wedding ceremony again. Watching the twin siblings get married together, Uncle Li could finally let go of the weight he'd been carrying. In the end, the whole family gathered together to take that long-awaited family portrait. 2 years later, Rueying gave birth to a daughter. Her mother-in-law was no longer lonely, staying busy helping care for her grandchild every day. Meijing's career was thriving, and she'd also found true love that was meant for her. Though Shinkai didn't become an actor, he worked hard and successfully became an outstanding talent agent. Howding had been struggling to conceive and was getting anxious, but then one day she suddenly felt morning sickness. A hospital checkup revealed she was expecting twins weighing over 8 pounds each. This unexpected blessing had the young couple over the moon. As the story draws to a close, Rueying sits in a rocking chair with her daughter in her arms, basking in the sunshine. She hopes her daughter will grow up healthy and wishes time would slow down, so she can keep living happily with her family forever. And with that, our story comes to an end. Thanks for watching, everyone. everyone, I'm Dino Kdrama, follow me and I'll see you in the next Kdrama.